Step out of the vehicle. Immigration and Customs Enforcement. I need to see your identification now.
I just got home from work. I'm a U.S. citizen. What's this about?
We have information you may be using fraudulent employment documents. Step out of the car.
Excuse me, tribal security, what's the situation?
This doesn't concern you. This is federal business.
I proceed to witness a potential civil rights violation happening in my community. What's your probable cause for the stop?
We received information she may be using fraudulent employment documents. That's all you need to know.
What information? Be specific. From who?
The woman didn't know she was being followed. She just finished her shift at the tribal casino, clocked out at 11:47 p.m., walked to her car in the employee parking lot like she had 5 nights a week for 3 years. She didn't notice the unmarked vehicle trailing her as she drove the 12 miles home to her apartment just outside the Gila River Indian Reservation boundary. She didn't see the headlights turn off as the vehicle pulled in behind her at the darkened apartment complex. She didn't realize she was about to become the target of an ICE operation until Agent Derek Hastings was standing at her car window with a flashlight in her face and a gun on his hip, demanding she step out of the vehicle. What Agent Hastings didn't know was that the tribal security officer who'd been doing routine patrols in the area had watched the entire tale, recognized the unmarked federal vehicle, and had already called his supervisor, who happened to be Thomas Whitehorse, chief of tribal security for the Gila River Indian community and a man who'd spent 15 years fighting federal overreach on tribal lands. The dashcam from Thomas's patrol vehicle captured everything that happened next. Every illegal command, every rights violation, every moment a federal agent operating just outside tribal jurisdiction thought he could detain a black woman without cause simply because she worked on the reservation. And every second of a tribal security chief stepping between federal authority and injustice, using nothing but knowledge of the law and absolute refusal to let it happen on his watch. If you believe tribal leaders have the right to protect everyone in their community regardless of whose jurisdiction the violation happens in, subscribe now. Because what Thomas Whitehorse did in that parking lot at midnight will restore your faith that courage and knowledge can stop injustice in real time. Nicole Patterson was 31 years old, born in Phoenix, raised in Tempe, a black woman who'd lived her entire life in Arizona. She worked as a cage cashier at the Wild Horse Pass Casino on Gila River land, handling transactions, counting money, dealing with customers. She'd passed extensive background checks to get the job. She had an Arizona driver's license. She had a social security number. She had a birth certificate from Good Samaritan Hospital in Phoenix. She was as American as anyone could be. She lived in a modest apartment complex 3 miles from the reservation boundary. A 15-minute commute to work, same routine every night. Clock out, walk to car, drive home, sleep, repeat. Agent Derek Hastings was 41 years old, 13 years with ICE, a file thick with complaints about aggressive tactics and targeting people based on appearance. He'd been conducting what he called surveillance operations near tribal casinos for months, operating on a theory that undocumented workers were being employed at tribal gaming facilities. He had no warrants, no specific tips, just suspicion and pattern analysis that looked a lot like racial profiling. He'd followed 3 other employees that month. All had been released after proving citizenship. He hadn't learned anything from those mistakes. When he saw Nicole, a black woman leaving the casino late at night, he decided she was worth following. Thomas Whitehorse was 47 years old, Pima and Maricopa descent, raised on Gila River land, former Army MP who'd served 2 tours before coming home to protect his community. He'd been chief of tribal security for 8 years. He knew federal law. He knew tribal law. He knew the boundaries, the jurisdictions, the limits of everyone's authority. And he knew Derek Hastings by reputation, a federal agent who operated in gray areas and pushed boundaries until someone pushed back. That night, Thomas was finishing a patrol shift when one of his officers radioed about a suspicious vehicle following a casino employee off reservation land. Thomas responded immediately. The dashcam shows Thomas's tribal police vehicle pulling into the apartment complex at 12:03 a.m. His headlights illuminate the scene. Nicole's car parked in her assigned spot, her door open, Agent Hastings standing at the driver's side with a flashlight. Nicole still seated, looking terrified. Thomas parks his vehicle at an angle, leaves his headlights on, illuminating everything, and exits with his own flashlight and his phone already recording. "Excuse me, tribal security. What's the situation here? Hastings turns, annoyed at the interruption. This doesn't concern you. This is federal business. Ma'am, are you all right? Thomas calls past Hastings to Nicole. She looks at him like he's a lifeline. I don't know. This man followed me home. He says he's immigration, but he won't show me ID. He's demanding I get out of my car. Thomas steps closer, his body language protective but professional. Sir, I'm Chief Whitehorse, Gila River Tribal Security. I need to see your credentials and understand what's happening here. Hastings pulls out his badge, flashes it quickly. Agent Derek Hastings. I see. I'm conducting an immigration enforcement operation. You can leave. Thomas doesn't move. An immigration enforcement operation on a private citizen in her apartment parking lot at midnight? Do you have a warrant? I don't need a warrant for immigration enforcement, Hastings says, stepping toward Nicole's car again. Ma'am, step out of the vehicle now. Nicole stays in her seat, her hands gripping the steering wheel. I'm a U.S. citizen. I was born in Phoenix. I work at the casino. I haven't done anything wrong. Thomas moves between Hastings and the car door, blocking access. Ma'am, you don't have to exit your vehicle without a warrant. Sir, I need you to explain your probable cause for this stop. Get out of my way, Hastings orders. You have no authority here. This is off-reservation land. I have authority to witness a potential civil rights violation happening in my community, Thomas replies calmly. This woman works on Gila River land. She's part of our community, and I'm not moving until you show me legal justification for this detention. Hastings's hand moves to his belt, near his weapon. A threat. Are you interfering with a federal officer? I'm exercising my right to observe and document a law enforcement action, Thomas says, his phone still recording, held steady. Now, what's your probable cause for stopping this woman? We received information she may be using fraudulent employment documents, Hastings says. What information? Be specific. From who? When? Hastings hesitates. That's classified. It's not classified, Thomas corrects him. Either you have probable cause or you don't. What specific articulable facts led you to follow this woman from her workplace to her home? A light turns on in an upstairs apartment. A resident looks out. Another window opens. Thomas notices and speaks louder, for the witnesses. Ma'am, what's your name? Nicole Patterson. Are you a U.S. citizen? Yes, sir. Born in Phoenix. Where do you work? Wild Horse Pass Casino. Cage cashier. 3 years. Did this agent witness you commit any crime? No, sir. I just drove home from work. Thomas turns back to Hastings. She's a U.S. citizen. She's committed no crime. You followed her from her workplace to her home without warrant or probable cause. This is illegal detention. You need to leave. Step aside or I'll arrest you for obstruction, Hastings threatens. Then arrest me, Thomas says. But you're not taking her without legal justification. A second tribal security vehicle pulls up, lights flashing. Officer Maria Santos exits. A Pima woman in her 30s who's worked under Thomas for 5 years. She's also recording. Chief, what's the situation? Federal agent attempting to detain a casino employee without warrant or cause, Thomas says. Document everything. Officer Santos positions herself where she can see Hastings, Nicole, and Thomas, her phone capturing all three. Hastings realizes he's now being recorded from multiple angles by tribal officers. This is federal jurisdiction. You have no authority to interfere. We're not interfering, Thomas says. We're witnessing. And what we're witnessing is an ICE agent conducting an illegal stop based on assumption. You have no warrant. You have no probable cause. You followed a woman from her job to her home and demanded she exit her vehicle. That's harassment. It's potentially kidnapping under color of law. And every second of this is being recorded. A third vehicle pulls in. Not tribal security this time. Chandler Police Department, responding to a 911 call from one of the apartment residents who'd seen federal agents harassing someone in the parking lot. Officer James Martinez exits, hand on his radio. What's going on here? Agent Hastings, ICE Hastings says, pulling out his badge again. Immigration enforcement. Stand down. Officer Martinez looks at the scene. ICE agent, 2 tribal security officers, a woman in her car looking scared. What's the immigration enforcement for? She's a U.S. citizen, Thomas interjects. Born in Phoenix. Works legally at the tribal casino. This agent followed her home and tried to force her out of her vehicle without warrant. Officer Martinez turns to Hastings. Sir, do you have a warrant for this woman? No, but I have authority under what? Martinez interrupts. What's your probable cause for this stop? Hastings is surrounded now. Tribal security. Local police. Witnesses in windows. Cameras recording. He's lost control of the situation and he knows it. We received information about fraudulent employment documents. From who? When? What specific information? Martinez presses. I need specifics or this looks like harassment. Hastings can't provide specifics because there aren't any. He'd followed Nicole based on appearance and assumption. Nothing more. Ma'am, Officer Martinez says to Nicole, are you a U.S. citizen? Yes, sir. I have my driver's license, my social security card, my birth certificate at home. I can prove it right now if you give me 5 minutes. Martinez turns to Hastings. She's offering to prove citizenship. Will that satisfy your enforcement action? Hastings knows he's trapped. If she proves citizenship, his entire operation looks like exactly what it is. Racial profiling. If he arrests her anyway, he's committing a federal crime on camera. Fine, she can go. But I'll verify her status through proper channels. That sounds like a threat, Thomas says. Are you planning to harass this woman again? I'm doing my job, Hastings snaps. Your job requires probable cause. Thomas replies. You didn't have it tonight. Don't come back without it. Hastings gets in his vehicle and leaves, tires spinning slightly as he exits the parking lot. The moment he's gone, Nicole starts shaking. The adrenaline that kept her calm during the confrontation floods out. Officer Martinez approaches her window. Ma'am, you're free to go. I'm going to file a report about this encounter. If that agent contacts you again, call 911 immediately. Reference this incident. Thomas hands Nicole his card. If you need anything, legal assistance, documentation, someone to verify your employment, call me directly. The Gila River Indian community takes care of our people. That includes casino employees. You did nothing wrong tonight. Nicole takes the card with trembling hands. Thank you. I thought he was going to take me. I didn't know what to do. You did exactly right, Thomas says. You stayed in your car. You asserted your rights. You stayed calm. That took courage. Nicole drives to her apartment, parks, and breaks down crying once she's inside. Officer Santos follows her to make sure she gets in safely. Thomas stays in the parking lot, reviewing the dashcam footage, making sure every second is preserved. The next morning, Nicole calls the number on Thomas's card. She wants to file a complaint. Thomas connects her with tribal attorneys and with a civil rights lawyer in Phoenix named David Chun, who'd worked with the Gila River community on federal overreach cases before. Chun reviews the footage and immediately recognizes the case's potential. This isn't just illegal detention. This is a federal agent conducting surveillance and enforcement based purely on racial profiling, stopped only by tribal intervention. Within 2 weeks, Nicole files a federal civil rights lawsuit. The defendants, Agent Derek Hastings personally, and ICE as an agency. The charges: unlawful detention, stalking, harassment, racial profiling, violation of Fourth Amendment rights, intentional infliction of emotional distress. Discovery reveals the pattern. Hastings had conducted 41 surveillance operations near tribal casinos over 18 months. 38 targeted people of color. 29 ended with no arrest after the person proved citizenship. He was stopping people based on where they worked and what they looked like, not on evidence. The case goes to trial 14 months later in federal court in Phoenix. The jury is diverse. 2 Native Americans, 3 Latino jurors, 2 black jurors, 5 white jurors from various backgrounds. They watch Thomas's dashcam footage. They watch Officer Santos's recording from a different angle. They hear Nicole's testimony about being followed, about the fear, about thinking she was going to be taken from her home for no reason. Thomas testifies about why he intervened. I've seen too many people detained illegally near our reservation. Federal agents who think proximity to tribal land means everyone is suspicious. Nicole works for our casino. She's part of our community. When I saw an unmarked vehicle following her off our land, I knew something was wrong. When I arrived and saw Agent Hastings demanding she exit her vehicle without warrant, I knew it was illegal. I couldn't stand by and let that happen. The cross-examination tries to paint Thomas as anti-federal law enforcement. You've had confrontations with federal agents before, haven't you? I've confronted illegal actions before, Thomas corrects. When federal agents violate people's rights on or near tribal land, I intervene. That's my job. That's my duty to my community. Officer Martinez testifies about arriving at the scene. I'm a police officer. I've conducted thousands of traffic stops and detentions. What Agent Hastings was doing had no legal basis. Following someone from work to home, demanding they exit their vehicle in their own parking lot, refusing to articulate probable cause, that's not law enforcement. That's harassment. Nicole testifies about the fear. I thought I was going to disappear. You hear stories about people being detained and held for days while ICE verifies their status. I'm a citizen. I was born here. But in that moment, I didn't know if that would matter. I thought he was going to take me anyway. Her therapist testifies about PTSD. She's developed severe anxiety about driving home from work. She takes different routes. She checks her mirrors constantly. She has panic attacks when she sees unmarked vehicles. This is textbook trauma from an unlawful detention attempt. The defense tries to argue Hastings acted in good faith based on training and protocols. But the prosecution brings in ICE's own policy manuals showing that following someone without probable cause, demanding they exit vehicles without warrant, and conducting enforcement based on appearance violates agency guidelines. Expert witnesses testify about racial profiling. Dr. Sarah Rodriguez, a sociologist studying immigration enforcement patterns, presents the statistics. When 70% of your surveillance operations target people of color and 70% of those end with no arrest because the person is a legal resident or citizen, that's not enforcement. That's systematic racial profiling. The prosecution's closing argument is delivered by attorney David Chun. Ladies and gentlemen, this case is about fear and power. Agent Hastings saw a black woman leaving a tribal casino late at night and decided, without evidence, without tip, without cause, that she was worth following. He tailed her for 12 miles. He waited until she was alone in a dark parking lot. He approached her vehicle and demanded she comply. The only thing that stopped an illegal detention was a tribal security chief who knew the law and refused to allow a civil rights violation in his community. This case is also about what didn't happen. Nicole Patterson was not arrested. She was not detained. She was not taken, because Thomas Whitehorse intervened. But she shouldn't have needed intervention. She shouldn't have been followed. She shouldn't have been stopped. The question before you is simple. What is that fear worth? What is the trauma of being hunted in your own community worth? What message needs to be sent to federal agents who think badges override constitutional protections? The jury deliberates for 11 hours over 2 days. When they return, the verdict is unanimous on all counts. Liable. The damages phase takes 3 more days. Medical records. Therapy bills. Lost wages from shifts Nicole couldn't work because panic attacks made her afraid to leave home. Then comes the punitive damages argument. This case isn't just about compensating Nicole. It's about deterring racial profiling disguised as immigration enforcement. The jury awards $30 million. $3 million compensatory damages. $27 million punitive damages. The courtroom gasps. Nicole sits perfectly still. David Chun beside her. Thomas Whitehorse in the row behind. When the judge reads the amount, Nicole closes her eyes and exhales 3 years of fear. The verdict makes national news. $30 million for unlawful detention attempt. One of the largest civil rights verdicts in immigration enforcement history. Hastings is terminated within a week. His appeal is denied. His law enforcement career ends. His name becomes synonymous with the cost of racial profiling. ICE implements new policies prohibiting surveillance operations without specific probable cause. Agent training includes the Nicole Patterson case as an example of constitutional violations. The Gila River Indian community uses the verdict as validation of their tribal security protocols. Thomas Whitehorse is promoted to Director of Public Safety for the entire reservation. Officer Santos becomes Chief of Tribal Security, filling Thomas's old role. Nicole uses part of the settlement to establish a legal defense fund for people targeted by immigration enforcement near tribal lands across Arizona. She quit the casino job, too many memories, and now works for a civil rights organization helping others file complaints against federal overreach. Years later, when asked if $30 million felt like justice, Nicole's answer is thoughtful. The money changed my life, provides security, funds legal help for others. But justice would have been not being followed home in the first place. What we got was accountability. Agent Hastings can never do this to anyone else. That matters more than the money. But somewhere tonight, someone else is being followed, being stopped, being detained without cause. That's why I do this work now. Thomas still patrols Gila River land. Still trains his officers on constitutional rights and federal limitations. Still tells the story of that midnight parking lot to anyone who'll listen. Not because he's proud, though he is, but because it teaches something essential. Courage isn't about confronting power. It's about knowing when power has no right to be there and refusing to let it operate unchecked. The dashcam footage is used in tribal law enforcement training across the country. It shows exactly what community protection looks like when knowledge meets courage. One agent learned a $30 million lesson about racial profiling. And somewhere on tribal lands across America, security officers know that protecting their community sometimes means standing between federal overreach and people who just want to get home safely. Should federal agents who conduct surveillance operations based on racial profiling face automatic criminal prosecution? Drop your answer below. Because what happened to Nicole Patterson wasn't about immigration enforcement. It was about a black woman being hunted for existing in the wrong place at the wrong time, stopped only because a tribal security chief refused to let federal authority override constitutional rights. If you believe tribal leaders have the power to protect everyone in their community, subscribe and turn on notifications. Tomorrow we're covering another case where someone thought their badge made them untouchable until cameras and courage proved otherwise.